This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The UN announced that it sent a team of military experts to Somalia to evaluate the security situation. The team held its first meeting with the leaders of the Islamic Courts militia, who now control most of Somalia. On the other hand, the Somali president is expected to visit the Ethiopian capital, but he has not disclosed the reason for this visit. This visit comes as tensions are increasing between the Islamic Courts militia, which accused Ethiopia of invading Somali lands. Ethiopia, however, denied the accusations, and the interim Somali government agreed and accused the Islamic Courts militia of trying to create a conflict with Ethiopia.
The population of Mogadishu has not enjoyed such security for many years. The influence of the warlords who ran the city for the past 16 years no longer exists, since the Islamic Courts militia forced them to leave 1 week ago. Since then, the Courts militia have enforced their control. Contrary to what Western officials have predicted, the Islamic Courts militia have not been strict in the way they run the city. Rather, they showed much flexibility in an attempt to improve their image with the West.
In the past, we used to face a lot of difficulties. Sometimes when ships used to dock here, some were pirated. But since the Islamic Courts militias took over, there is no more piracy.
The city is calm, but people are very cautious because the political situation in Somalia is not stable. The Islamic Courts militia confirmed on several occasions that it does not want power, rather that the Somalis choose their government by themselves. In a sign of goodwill, the leaders of the Islamic Courts left the city of Jowhar after capturing it. They conducted talks with tribal chiefs there, in which they agreed to select an interim government council for the city, which was assigned the task of implementing Islamic law to run the city. However, some accused the Islamic Courts militia of robbing the city in a major way before leaving it. The Islamic Courts denied these accusations and accused Ethiopia of penetrating Somali territories and demanded that the international community request that Ethiopia leave Somalia in order to avoid another conflict. The interim Somali government defended Ethiopia by undermining the accusations of the Islamic Courts militia against Ethiopia, saying that the objective of the Islamic Courts is to distract the public attention away from their political ambitions to control all of Somalia, starting with the city of Didawa, where the interim government is currently based. This created fear among the international community that another war may erupt between the interim Somali government and the Islamic Courts militia. The UN used these developments to call for the deployment of an international peacekeeping force in Somalia. One meeting was held in Addis Ababa between representatives of the African Union, European Union, and the UN, where they agreed to send an evaluation team to Somalia to pave the way for the deployment of international forces. The West and the interim Somali government share the view that these forces will help spread peace and stability in Somalia, which was torn apart by fierce war and transformed its children to soldiers like this young man. He was forced to carry weapons since he was 8 years old.
If the situation calms down, I would like to go to school to get an education. I do not want to be a soldier forever.
The Islamic Courts militia, on the other hand, opposed the intervention of international forces, saying that their presence in Somalia would not create peace, rather it will create devastating civil war. They also point out the large demonstrations that were held in the country to protest the parliament decision to support the deployment of international forces in Somalia.
To follow up with this topic, we have with us Jamal Kruma from Cairo. Jamal, as an expert of African issues, what is the possibility that the Somali conflict may expand in the region, especially after Ethiopia became involved?
طبعا الأوضاع هناك في الصومال
Of course, there is a lot of concern in Somalia because the interim government of President Abdullah Yusuf is viewed by many Somalis as a proxy to the Ethiopian government. This is especially the view of the Islamic Courts leaders. Of course, in general, there is a historical animosity between the Somalis and Ethiopia. It is now clear that the leaders of the Islamic Courts militias are taking advantage of this historical animosity.
Will there be some confrontations between the interim government and the Islamic courts?
أعتقد إن
I believe that the interim Somali government will try to defend the city of Didawa. I do not think the Islamic Courts militia will attack Didawa, at least at this current time. Do not forget that the president of the Somali government is making a visit to Ethiopia at this time.
Do you think at this time the deployment of international forces is inevitable since it is backed by the European Union, African Union, and the United Nations?
يعني أعتقد إن المظاهرات التي شاهدناها في
I believe that the protests that we witnessed in Mogadishu and other areas in Somalia, which are under the control of the Islamic courts, express the court's opposition to any kind of foreign intervention and any kind of military presence, especially if these forces are from Ethiopia. If this would happen, then a war might erupt in the entire region. But the Islamic Courts militia might agree to a middle ground solution in which special forces made up of Arab and African countries, excluding Ethiopia, can be deployed in Somalia.
Three Palestinian children, Mohammed Ruka, Sumaya Mahmoud al-Sharif, and Bilal al-Hissi, were martyred in a new Israeli criminal airstrike. In addition, the attack injured 15 other civilians, including 8 children. 3 of the wounded children sustained serious injuries. Today's airstrike targeted a civilian car traveling on Jalal Street in the area of Sheikh Radwan in the city of Gaza. For more information, we are joined from Gaza by our correspondent, Samir Khalifa. Samir, good evening.
Good evening, Abu Muhammad.
It is a new Israeli crime, and as usual, the victims were children. What exactly took place on the Jalal Street?
An Israeli surveillance plane launched 2 missiles targeting a civilian car that was traveling on the Jalal Street north of the Gaza Strip, near the area of Sheikh Radwan and Jabalia city limit. The 2 missiles directly hit the car that was carrying members of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, the military wing for Fatah. The driver was wounded, but the other occupants managed to escape. When the missiles hit the targeted car, there were some children playing in the area. One child, Muhammad Jamal Ruka, was killed instantly, and 15 others, including 8 children, were wounded in the attack. The victims were transported to the Shifa hospital in the city of Gaza. 2 children, Bilal al-Hissi and Sumaya Muhammad al-Sharif, later died in the hospital, raising the death toll to 3 martyrs. Among the martyrs were a 5-year-old